How's it going, everyone? I am the producer and content creator behind the channel Everything PS5 Pro. Today we need to talk about some misnomers and some misinformation and just overall issues in the calibration space of when it comes to OLED panels that people don't really seem to understand, and some people just talk it out and just make it seem like they know what they're talking about. And in this video I'm going to be doing a deep dive trying to explain exactly where stuff has gone wrong and kind of how the industry isn't really in the same place that it was before, and how we can't use the same standards anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. There are obviously some problems here that we gotta kind of iron out and kind of talk about, honestly, because the community is just doing a lot of errors. There might be so that the professionals out there know about this, but for some reason they aren't talking about it. It might just have to do with it being like there isn't an oversimplified way of talking about this, and they gather that 90% of the consumers out there might not know or understand, even if they did try to explain. And I think explaining it in a way that everyone will understand, it's gonna be impossible. So I'm just gonna try to explain it so that they can maybe start to dial in settings. And at the end of this video, if you still feel kind of I don't understand what anything he's saying, and you kind of just want to try out the settings that I've dialed in to see if it actually does look better or worse, it will be there. There will be a video at the end of the video in the right corner, and you can just click on it and you can try those settings out for yourself, and you can just copy and paste. It should be leaning a little bit more in green or magenta depending on your panel. We can have some slight deviations, but overall it doesn't really matter which LG OLED you have. As long as it's an LG OLED, the model doesn't matter. You can be using a C1 or a C4 or a G series TV or a B series TV. My settings will translate perfectly fine throughout all of the models. It doesn't matter if it's 2 years newer than the C4, it will still translate perfectly fine. As long as they don't go from OLED to some other panel technology entirely, like QD OLED, then we might have to change some of the white balance values. It should overall translate over perfectly fine. Okay, so let's talk about the first key issues when it comes to calibration and just configuring your LG OLED in a way that I think everybody just gets this wrong. Even the professionals are getting this wrong, and I think we gotta talk about this in a way that everyone can understand. So, what is the most important issue on an LG OLED that you first have to iron out to make it look how it looked in your head when you thought about getting an OLED when you were going from LCD? Well, the pure blacks is of course something that you might be thinking about, but there are issues near black always on all OLEDs that we just gotta iron out, honestly. It is just not okay in the first place. And so what are we talking about here? Well, the biggest issue with an LG OLED, or any OLED in general, honestly, is the video range mismatch. So when people normally say you will not be mismatching the image or the video range, people are saying you can't go full range and limited range. That will be a mismatch. And in normal cases, yes. However, there is kind of a misnomer in this, and that LG OLEDs don't talk in the same spectrum of full range to full range that you normally would say. So when we're talking about this, you got to think about it in this way. The content that you are displaying might be sending out its full range of contrast, its full range of information. Think of it in that way. Now, what happens with the TV? Well, you have to align the picture with the contrast in the way that it was meant to be aligned. So all industry standards are always made with limited range in mind. What happens then if we go into a movie and we are forcing full? So essentially, think of it like this. You have a 100% range right here. This is 0%, 100%. This is full range. But the movie was made with limited range. So this is its full range of information in metadata. So what happens if we force a full range signal on the TV when it was made in limited range? Well, essentially we get raised blacks. So that it's not good. It looks like we're getting more detail near black, but honestly, the only thing that we're getting is we're washing out midtones. So the midtone luminance will be brighter than it's supposed to be, essentially giving you the look of what dynamic tone mapping would have given you if you did calibrate your panel correctly. You also get slightly easier on the eyes
of a way to see the highlights. So the highlights won't be as bright anymore, and they won't be as close to clipping as before. So it will kind of be easier even with your eyes to calibrate games and get the right looking settings on your TV for like movies and whatnot if you don't know what you're doing. But in a general sense, this is not correct. So if the content that we know, all games, all media, is always made for limited range in mind, well, we kind of have to align the picture from the source to be full range so that it sends all of its information. But then on the TV, we have to dial it back to limited so that the movies, the TV series, the games look correct. What happens if we do full then? Okay, so it's exactly what I just explained with the 100% range there. We are getting higher range output of stuff that we are not supposed to be seeing. It doesn't give us more, even though you might think it is giving you more. We are just grabbing the color gamut that we have, you know, the large triangle of colors, and we have the reach of how much of this color gamut can be reached, and we are in full range. Okay, so good, we have our color gamut, but what happens when we push full range on the TV? When really the TV needs to talk in the correct format to like match the source material. What happens is we're trying to push for the gradients outside of what the color gamut is actually supposed to be reaching. In this case, the contrast ratio of the source content. This causes issues like just overall desaturation of the image, which a lot of people on the market say when they look at an LG OLED. They say it's desaturated compared to an QD OLED. Most of the time, it's only really because of this mismatch, and people don't really come to get it. And I understand if you're like amateur level or beginner, you kind of most likely don't really understand how these things work, and it's totally fine. It's just even the pros recommend the full as a range, and I think yes, if you don't know what you're doing, you will recommend full. It's just that's not how the TV actually works. That's not how the source material actually worked. So let's talk about why it's always good to dial down the black level in very like a lot of different content types. So from the beginning of time, it's honestly not surprising at all if you're watching content and it looks like this. So in normal cases, you're gonna look at something and near black is going to be very bright. You're going to have blue near black like this, and it doesn't really matter if you've calibrated the panel or not. It is going to be a little too bright near black in almost all content. It has to do with it being full range when it's not supposed to, and it also is like from the developer side, you kind of gotta think about it like this. Not everyone has an LG OLED. Most people out there will have very cheap TV panels. So when they look at the content, they have to kind of make it a little bit like, okay, we don't want to push colors too much because then it will look really weird and like smudgy and blemishy on a really good panel with really good color gamut reach, with really good settings. And then if you go to a really cheap panel, it's just gonna look like crap, you know? It's gonna look good on a good panel, bad on a bad panel. That sounds great, but no, it doesn't, because like 90% of people don't have an LG OLED and a good panel. So what do? Well, we raise the blacks to make sure that those panels with bad black level detail still have the detail there, because it kind of aligns on those panels in a greater way. If you have a really bad panel, no offense, but if you don't have an LG OLED, your TV might always be locked into a limited state, which means that the limited range is always locked, and the black level detail is crushing on that panel because it's a cheap LCD or whatever. You get the idea, right? So what happens then is, now when you're looking at the black level detail, if you were to dial down the black level 2 or 3 clicks, you might be crushing blacks instantly because the panel can't actually preserve the real black level detail, and it doesn't have the granular gamma switching when it comes to going down in slides of the black level. That's how I kind of can explain it. It would be easier to explain this in Swedish, honestly, because I am from Sweden. So I'm gonna try my best here. It's honestly, I would love it if HDTVTEST could see this video and be like, yes, okay, I will make a more professional analysis of what he's talking about and kind of give you guys a more English understanding of it, because like honestly, I have no idea how to put all of this into words for a normal human being to understand. I could be very technical, but honestly, I'm just going to throw around a lot of advanced terms to sound smarter than I really am at this aspect. So it's like subject, sorry. So you get the idea. So I'm going to try to explain it in a way in English that you can understand as easy as possible anyways. So we need to wash out the image then, so that all of the people of the market can enjoy my content that I've created. That's essentially it, right? On my channel, we try to map everything for an LG OLED because, well, that's what we are using, and I want it to look its best. So now, I can guarantee to you that when the creator, I don't remember what his name is, bless his heart, but the creator for the Studio Ghibli anime movies, he did not make these movies to be washed out. He made these movies to look amazing, near black, and to have really great colors. But he had to wash them out, sadly, when they were sending out the SDR resolve. So the reference becomes this. It just becomes blue near black, but that's a problem though. Near black, it was never blue. This is a byproduct of doing a mismatch. So what is the mismatch here? Well, the mismatch in this case is going full. So how do we correct this? In normal cases, doing a panel calibration, which I subsidize on my channel for all LG OLED users for free. I will leave that at the end of the video as well, as I said, and in the description. That will remove this blue that we have near black, but just understand, you will have one problem. We have the near blue, we have the near black being blue, and we have the near black being way too bright. The mid-tone brightness here has essentially like zero specularity, zero depth. It just looks so flat for being an OLED, right? Like I can't be the only one that sees this. And I know I'm not the only one. Like everyone on my channel, we're up in 5,000 people at this point. A lot of people, like essentially everyone, 80%, agrees that, yeah, this is not what I expected when I bought an OLED. And then you might be saying, oh, more saturation and more contrast will fix the issues. No. We still got to understand what realism is, what real life looks like. We got to use reference, key points. We cannot just boost everything like a crazy person. So if I just went ham to the buck now and just put in some random settings without explaining, you might think it's too dark. Okay, so why is it blue near black? That has to do with white balance, 22-point calibration. We align that correctly. It now becomes more gray, brown looking near black. Just as it would be in real life, we kind of tend to lose color gamuts in real life with our eyes. It's not called color gamuts for the eyes, but the color spectrum, I guess, would be another English word for it. Near black, we kind of tend to just lose colors completely. Not all colors. Yellow can be kind of still there, kind of tends to become whiter near black. You get the idea. We are getting more desaturated as closer to black that we get, yeah. So there shouldn't be any blue here at least. I think everyone can agree on that. And if there isn't any light here, you know, the most important aspects will also always be on a 4x3 plane, because from the get-go, a lot of people didn't have 16:9 panels. So 16:9 panels was not the reference, it was 4:3 aspect ratio. So everything has to be, the most important aspects of a movie always has to be right here, in the middle part of the frame. So this is what the content creators, the developers always wanted to see, at least when it comes to movies and TV series. It's very important. It has to be mapped for a person with a 4x3 CRT, essentially, almost. Like it's not really that crazy, but kind of it's still in that ballpark. So now that we know that it's supposed to be here, then this is kind of just bonus content. Okay, so this is not really, like, we don't have to care about this. This is just bonus right here. But the near black is this lifted, and the midtones is this lifted, and the shadows are this bright. Even though these details aren't necessarily really supposed to be there, you know, they are just filler for the entire image or so. These things, the highlights here, and like how this looks and how this looks and how this looks, these are small details that the developer or the image creator wants you to see, to kind of get into the experience more. Heck, my leg is itching like crazy. Okay, so if you were to map your panel to make it look for this specific movie exactly how I think it should be looking, There's no way of knowing if that is the 100% reference, of course. But what I've done is I've removed all of the layers of washout. I've tried to realign the entire image, and it will look like this. Now, there's a huge difference here. We're using upscaling on the TV, which is not going to be artistic intent, because that's essentially mapping on top of the image. But if we forget about the upscaling aspects to make it look sharper, the thing that I am noticing in real life, we still have the near black detail here now, but it now looks deeper and darker, and we don't have any blue, because that has also been fixed with 22-point calibration. So now we still see everything. You remember we talked about the 4:3 ratio. We see everything that is supposed to be here, and in this case the composition is also mapping us towards the two left of the lines. In photography you have the the composition on the camera, and you always kind of tend to want to map into these the cornering lines. That can be another video. I can talk about that in another video. I've been a photographer for 8 years. That is not really relevant too much to this video, so don't care too much about that. Just know that in this keyframe they are more leaning in towards the left side of the composition. That makes us look towards this doorway here, and you have a lot of wasted space right here, and then they want to kind of key into like more of an ambience kind of vibe, and like that, ooh, this looks moody, So darkness obviously has a lot to be evaluated here. So the more darkness we bring in, the closer to a ruined image we will get, but the closer to a realistic image we will get as well. So we kind of gotta find a balancing act. This is where the amateur will do wrong and make it too dark, and there will also be fluctuations in some content. Like some movies are very bright near black in some scenes, and some scenes can be very dark. So just dialing down the black level won't do in many cases. It will just ruin some scenes, and some scenes will look great, right? So you kind of gotta find the darkest scene in the movie, which will take time. Not everyone want to do that, and it's fine then if you want to just leave the black level at like 45 or 50 on your OLED. But in my case, I always like in SDR to leave it around 38 or have a fluctuating, so I kind of change it all the time, but I'm a psychopath when it comes to black levels. So don't care about that too much. Just understand that when looking at the image like this, there is a lot of detail there that you're not really supposed to see. I can still see all the details, not on camera, mind you, but I can still see all of the details here. Everything that I'm supposed to see, even the stuff near black. In real life, I can't see it. It's just the camera can't pick it up. So I'm not getting any black level crush of any important information. So what happens if we're getting black level crush of important information? That's not nice. We don't want black level crush, guys. Black level crush will be important information that is clearly just become peak black. That can be very hard to see if you turn off all the lights in the room, and you make sure that you hold your arm out so that you don't get blinded by white elements. You look very close. If you don't see any grain or any flickering of the panel in the area, you know that it's turned off the pixels. Now, if you were to go back to the previous settings and you use this, which is very bright, and you just see a shade of gray there, and there are no details, most likely you weren't supposed to see those details in the first place. So it's okay getting black level crush in those places, essentially making it peak black, which would be the same thing in real life. In this case though, we have some pointers. We can see that right here, I'm gonna point to it there, we can see that it's looking like it's black, but it isn't actually black. We have the same thing here. We don't have any detail on this lamp, it is just black. Then we have the specular detail next to it. So I'm gonna zoom in and show you guys exactly what I mean. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have a darker tone here. So the undertones of the midtones here are a lot deeper and darker. And then we have the like very slim details here. Like, I don't even know if this is gonna pick up on camera. These are like slightly darker than the near black there. So in general, they are telling us that these very black points most likely are supposed to be black. They aren't supposed to be lifted black like this. So if you go into my calibration for this movie specifically, now everything starts to look like it's crushing. So all the details here might be crushing now. And we can still see the nice undertone details here. But in general, everything that supposed to look black now looks black, and everything that is supposed to look near black looks near black-ish. You know, you get that kind of sense of depth now in the scene. So this also kind of alleviates all of the pains of getting an OLED and then looking at the picture and getting that weird washout. Now we don't have any washout anymore, and if you compare this to the default of a QD OLED, you would now say that it looks better than a QD OLED. You can also make the QD OLED look a lot better than this, of course, because you have higher color volume, but I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. So now we're gonna have to show other source content as well. I can't just show this one framework, of course, but kind of keep in mind what I've said here. No image is supposed to look like this. Just because it's default blah blah blah, it doesn't make it right, man. And if you decide to use filmmaking mode, obviously it looks the exact same. It doesn't matter if you're using Warm 50 or if you're using your own calibration or if you have a professional calibration. If you still have blue near black like this, that your calibration professionally wasn't done well. On my calibration, you won't have this issue. And I think it's very obvious that it kind of just removes the blue and also makes it a lot darker, so you kind of can't even see it. You're gonna have to trust me on this point though. I've made a lot of videos talking about this, and I will talk about it further along in the video as well if I remember to. This is kind of a long in-depth video, and I don't have a script to go off from, so we'll see how this goes. But now you kind of understand. We have the details that we need, the details that the artist wanted us to see, and we are still keyframing in that the 4:3 aspect ratio is the most important content of the scenery. So great, now let's move on to the next key points that are very important to keep in mind when calibrating your panel or just looking for how to configure your TV to make it look right for the movie or the game that you're watching. Okay, so let's talk about this scene in Fury. Well, this is running in SDR currently. So the issue that we see here is we have some raised blacks. Why is there raised blacks in this scene? Because it should be near black, it should be in the darkness. The only thing we should really be seeing is the specular details and overall just his details of his body. And like here is a lot of the focus points and here is a lot of focus points. So what they're really giving us focus here, the composition is now a little bit leaning towards here, but it's also giving us some extras back up there to kind of still give us the vibe and the ambience, right? So the ambience is set in red, and we're also getting the nice cold colors from up there. It's gonna look very different on camera to real life. In real life, it's more like this, how it looks, but we still have the very obvious raised blacks. So, as we talked about before, they have to make this for all panels. So if you're on a really bad older LCD, which most people are, the blacks here will look correct and too dark, so they won't look this lifted. It will only look this lifted on an LG OLED because we are in a full format when we're supposed to be in limited. And the only way to fix this when you're in a movie is to go into the TV settings and grab the black level and dial this down until you see the corner up there where you have you have pure black up here on the border, and you drag this down until you meet the same point there. This is going to be hard to map live, but I'm going to do this. You don't have to be 100%, but I think that looks great. I'm going to zoom out again. And now everything should look very correct. In this movie, for this specific scene anyways, the black level needs to be on 39. Okay, so this is not a reference point at all. I'm just pointing out, like, when they recorded this, it was closer towards this brightness level near black than what it is from the get-go. If you were to use filmmaking mode, you can see how it looks a lot bluer, greener, and it's black rays. And with my settings now, it looks inkier black. I can up the exposure even more just to really hone it in. You can see the difference here of how the OLED is handling the image. Of course, it looks a lot cleaner. But you kind of get the idea with the black levels and the midtones anyways. If you have the midtones too high, that is when the image looks a little washed out. This is also something that is a big problem on OLEDs, and it's not a big problem on QD OLEDs, but it still is a problem, of course, but not as much of a problem. QD OLEDs tend to be a lot darker in midtones. So it's not as much of a problem with the black levels, but keep that in mind it's still a problem, and you kind of have to dial it down to clean up the image resolve in general. And of course, filmmaker mode, whilst it is maybe closer with the skin tones, when it comes to everything else, it's just worse, honestly, than default settings on the TV. It just makes everything greener, and it doesn't track everything as it should, honestly. It just doesn't look good. And you can see that very clearly. So the number one issue that I see when people are using HDR on an OLED panel is that they are on PC and they are using a Gamma 2.2 tracking. When that is for SDR, that will mess with colors near black, that will mess with color gammas, it will mess with how the image luminance of the midtones and undertones look, making shadows look brighter than they're intended to. It also kind of ruins the overall contrast resolve. And they are also using full, which is like, now you're mismatching so many things that you are absolutely cracked out of your mind, man. And no, you should not be tracking for sRGB, or you should not be tracking for Gamma 2.2 or 2.4. If you're in HDR, it should be ST2084. And if you're in SDR, it should be Gamma 2.2, which is what people are saying. But I don't think that is correct, because movies look a lot better in BT1884. I'm actually a little bit curious if that is what it's called now that I say it out loud. We're gonna check this live, boys. Live. Brightness. Okay, BT1886. Sorry, guys. Yes. So, that is SDR. That's how I track SDR. I think it looks a lot more cohesive, a lot more well-rounded. When it comes to midtones and shadow detail, I just think everything looks a lot more cleaner, clearer. You still have to fix blue near black and the ugly green tint on LED OLED. So let's not talk anymore about Gamma. Let's honestly just talk about something that I think is super wrong. And we can show it off on video, but I don't think it will show off too well, because when I change from one white balance to another this fast, the camera will switch the white balance slightly to kind of counteract from it being too green. So you won't really see it that much. So it might even make my calibration look more red magenta than it actually is. So we won't be doing that, but I will be talking about it in this way. When I first was starting to work as a calibrator at Sweden, which is the essentially largest electronic company here in Sweden, the biggest issue that I saw when I talked to calibrators was that, oh, hey, I've been working as a calibrator for 5 years. I know absolutely nothing about this program. When you talk to me about calibration, please don't even ask. I don't know. I've learned how to use Calman. I've learned what certain things on screen mean, and I know what to do to get acceptable, accurate measurements. Never even close to 100% accurate, which will not even be possible. But that is kind of my ethic behind my work. And I am like, what? You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what the menus on the TV does when you're changing them. You're just really looking at the laptop on your left, the PC, and just plugging in the colorimeter or spectrometer, and you're just like following and tracking and trying to get good measurement. You don't know anything about the TV or what it's doing. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't really, and I don't really care. And I'm like, so people pay you $250, like essentially for a calibration, and you don't care at all about how the image looks in the end. If it has like a green tint on LG OLED, he's like, yeah, I have noticed it having a green tint. And I just think that's how the panel technology resolve comes out in the end. It is green. And I'm like, no, but there's no way, because everyone is saying that these panels are accurate. I've been doing color correction, color grading, and being a photographer for 8 years. I would be the first to see if there's some issues with tints. And he says, yeah, okay, I get that. I haven't worked with color grading or anything, so I wouldn't be able to say anything, Tom. I get what you're saying, though. But I just think that's how the panels work, honestly. But I don't know. I just work as a calibrator, so I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, but you're like, man, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, you say that you're a calibrator, but you are saying also that you essentially know nothing, and that you just like, how is this becoming accurate? And he's like, it honestly just has to do with white balance. You make the gray slides look gray, and you can see it on the software if it looks gray. and you look at white, and if it looks white enough close to D65 white point, 6500K, and most of the time you want to track it to 6400K is what he said, it will look more cohesive and greater. And I was like, are you thinking about the issues with auto detect, how that kind of overtracks blue near black? Or are you looking at the green tint? And it's like, no, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know about issues like that. And I'm like, no, but those issues, or they should be visible on the program, right? And he's like, the blue might be visible on the program, but I don't tend to use 22-point calibration at all. It just overcomplicates things. And I'm like, so when you do a calibration at essentially you're paying 2,500 Swedish crowns for a I wouldn't even call it a calibration then, because it's like nothing is close enough to reference because it has a green tint. And then I talked to, which is another company, and there is a guy there has been doing calibrations for 12 years. This is a real calibration veteran. Like he really knows panel technology, gamma, like he is cued in. Taught me a lot of things as well. So big props to him. I can't say his name. I don't want to get sued. But he said outright that he doesn't like the green tint of an LG OLED. He has never tried to get away the green tint, because when you do a complete calibration and you get like 98% accurate, which is really good, by the way, that is like, it doesn't sound like it's good, but in the calibration world, that is freaking insane when you get that close to 100% perfection. 98% of the entire piece, of the entire panel accuracy, that is insanely good. So when you sit at that accuracy level and you still have a green tint, I'm like, is it possible that you would reach 100% if you got away the green tint? And it's like, no, because the software doesn't even catch that there is a green tint. So I think it's just the eyes, he says. Okay, so it's the eyes now. My eyes are just tricking me. And then he goes on the tantrum and he talks about how if you look at the TV for too long and just dialing in the settings, your eyes auto-calibrate the colors, and it will auto-correct for issues and blah, blah, blah. And it will just end up looking weird. And then you go away, and then you come back after 15 minutes and your TV looks like crap. That's why you have to use calibration software. And I'm like, yeah, I noticed that. That's definitely a thing. But they look green though. So how do you get away the green? And then he was like, you could go into 22-point calibration and mess with the picture there and with the white balance. And in the end, maybe you could get away the green tint. But I think it might have to do with just the coating of the plastic layer of the outside of the panel being green. And I was like, no, but I don't think so, because I've tried to calibrate it away. And I got it away. And then he was like, yeah, but did you use calibration gear though? Because I am 100% sure you didn't get accurate values. Like, it's impossible. And then I said, like, man, I spent 3,000 hours plus poking at the TV, having a lot of fun. You can try my measurements out. He never did. He never tried them out. He was really stubborn, and I get it. He's a calibrator, professional. Man, I'm not talking shit about you behind your back, but it's like, you didn't even try. And I think in the calibration world, like, even the pros are stubborn as hell. They are like, full is correct, because it's the highest range the TV can pick up. But it doesn't take into mind what the content was actually made in, so it will add a lot of issues. And these issues are not great for the common consumer, man. It makes the image look washed out and just it lacks punch. Like, if you're on PS5 and you're using a nice wallpaper like this, let's go into using filmmaking mode instead of game optimizer, and we're in HDR and we're forcing that on the SDR resolve of the display, we get this. Okay, so I'm gonna show you. It looks very washed out now. So the PS5 will show you this blue near black here, but it's in general supposed to be warm tinged on the, sorry, let me get this away. Warm tinged on this, so it should be like a warm lamp, lighting into the water essentially, and we don't have any issues in the water, like any dirt or anything, and then we have the bottom of the floor. So it's essentially like water. That's what it is. We're underwater, and you have the sunlight creeping in for the water right here. That should be a little bit warm tinged. The color of it kind of depends on your panel, of course, and how it's leaning. So it's going to be a little bit green or magenta, depending on what you do. But this blue here is a tracking issue caused by it being SDR gamma 2.2, but then you go into HDR doing ST2084, you get blue. So there is a way to fix that issue. That issue will also sadly be in all games when in HDR on PS5. This is not an issue on PC, at least not in games, because games don't really have ST2084 pure support on PC. You have to kind of mod it in, and it becomes just a headache, and I'm not even gonna attempt to talk about that in this video. This video will be 5 hours long if I'm gonna do that, honestly. Like it's an utter debacle. But just think of it like this. The image should be gray in the background outside of this light scattering here. So what happens is, right here or so, where the light stops, it will start to become darker and darker and darker gray until it just becomes almost black. It doesn't turn black, but almost. It doesn't look like that at all in this case. In filmmaking mode, using Warm 50, this looks very green. When it's not supposed to look green, obviously it looks really wrong on LG OLED, and this looks very blue. Now, if we fix those with my calibrated settings, as I said, they will be at the end of the video, we fix this, and we align the image with limited on the TV, and we'll do auto or full on the PS5. They are the same, but I recommend doing auto. We get this image, and now it might look a little magenta on the camera, and it will kind of be slightly magenta, because it's like, do you either want green or do you want a little bit magenta? Getting 100% in the middle there is never going to be possible, especially if you're not using any calibration gear. It's gonna be hard to get that dialed in, but I'm happy with how it looks. So the thing is, now we get that darker look, and we don't have the blue being there. And a lot of stuff that I've noticed with these panels is, first, we got one issue fixed that nobody has talked about, and that was that the TV was over tracking blue on the color gamut auto detect. So when HDTVTEST before was saying auto detect is the best one, yeah, that is the correct thing to say. It is, yes, but blue was being pushed too much on there. So now you can basically not see it in my calibration at all. Yeah, it's not going to be possible to show off here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to filmmaking mode. You can see the blue being there, and let's see, this should make it easier to see. We're gonna force full instead on the TV, which is not correct at all, but there we go. Now you should see there is a little bit of blue there left, but very, very slight. So now when we go back and forth, can you see how it becomes very blue and green in the image? Green here, blue there, and then my calibration makes it look more magenta there and gray there, right? Because the lights have a little bit magenta side toning, and it isn't aligned correctly now because we are in full and it's supposed to be limited, so it will be even more obvious, of course. But you can see how issues with my calibration becomes more obvious when we're stretching the panel's capabilities like this beyond what it's supposed to be. For the source material is supposed to be here, but we're forcing it there. It is causing misalignments in the calibration, and I think calibrators don't see this in the software, and they don't care about it. They just want the most range possible. It doesn't necessarily mean it's correct, and I think people don't really understand this because the pros, HDTVTEST and whatnot, they never talk about this. So if you listen to gaming tech or HDTVTEST, they will say use auto, use HIG, use warm 50, don't use any sharpness, blah blah blah. You know, they talk about all of those things, and it's not necessarily always the right way to go, because just using warm 50 will make the screen way too cold and way too green, and just honestly it doesn't look right. A lot of people will say it's too warm. It's not warm though, it's still cold. It just, the issue is the green is being pushed too much. That kind of makes it look less warm than it actually is underneath. It's a whole thing. I understand if you don't get that. It's a calibrator's backend kind of thing. So yeah, now you know about this issue. And the thing that I said there was near black in the 22-point code value on the first 4 slabs, near black. So if you go to the darkest point and then you fix that, -10 on blue, and then you go up I think it's 5 or 4 steps. In SDR it would be 2.5 up to 15, and in code value it would be 101 on the C4 77-inch up to 346, I believe. I changed those with my calibrated settings to fix that blue, essentially overshoot of the color saturation. I think it has to do with a lot of different issues, but the biggest issue I found when you are on PS5 because of the HDMI signal issues with blue was that if you're using auto detect, this has been fixed, so don't care about this now. We talked with LG and they have fixed this issue, which is awesome. There's still one issue though on PS5, and that's when you're, I don't know if this is gonna show off on camera, but when you do 50 is the panel's default value, but it's not the most neutral point of what a default should actually be. 49, however, is the default point of when all colors are aligning almost perfectly. If you talk to a calibrator, he will never touch this, he will leave it at 50. I bet you will get insane freaking calibration values if you do 49, because I've noticed colors are pushing on blue way higher than they should. So don't calibrate your panel and start with 50. Start with 49 on auto detect and then do a calibration and then give me your measurements. I gather for sure it will be a lot better than before. And if you still can't get away the green tint, you're an amateur when it comes to calibration, and I don't blame you. 90% of the pros out there don't know how to get away the green tint. We've done that on the channel, and yes, it will be slightly more magenta instead of leading in that way. I don't see that as a problem though. Most people think that magenta looks a lot cleaner when it's very slight magenta than when it's very slight green. Green will not look good on skin tones. There are very slight cases where green might be on skin tones. This won't be a problem even, but it's like if you're outdoors and you're suntan in real life and you have a lot of greenery around you, there will be a little bit scattered light from the green up on your face. If you have a beige, warm sun-kissed tone on your head or whatever your skin tones, and that green will bleed into your skin tones a little bit. That won't be there if you're leaning towards magenta a little bit. So it's like, but that's just a panel issue, honestly. Like you can't get 100% accuracy all the time. That is just how it is. So don't think about that too much. It's literally, we're talking about like crazy levels of of being a professional here. Like, don't care about it. And it will never be 100% perfect. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, we've dialed in the TV and tried to fix a lot of issues on this channel. And I think at some point we've learned that these TVs look like crap from the get-go. And if you use HDTVTEST configuration settings, he essentially just goes into energy saver, disables that to get more panel peak. And then he uses auto, which is really bad, because if you misalign the SDR and HDR signal in that way, you don't get 1100 nit peak that the panel is capable of, or 986 or whatever it was. You get 730 nits peak on the panel in Game Optimizer, which is not what you would want. You would want 980 or 1100 in vivid mode, of course. So yes, a lot of people don't talk about these things, and I think it's just horrible. Like, man, you paid a lot for these panels, and you should get the good experience that you paid your money for. So make sure to subscribe, watch my calibration video that will show up here in the end of the video, and map in those settings and just really try it out. And make sure to leave comments if you have any questions, of course, and I'll try to explain it as best as I can. I also do technical seminars on a personal, private level on calls on Discord. If you want to talk and get to learn this stuff more on a deeper level, I will try to explain it to you. I spend hours on end every single day talking to people on Discord in private chats and doing like seminar calls, and I try to teach people on a more teacher basis, honestly, to try to help out people and kind of get them to kind of understand why I am right. Because if you're watching this video, you should understand that I am right at this point, and that it's just an industry standard gone wrong at some point of the sub-chain, and people are just doing misinformation at this point, and it gotta be corrected, honestly, in my opinion. It's not too important, but it's like you pay a lot of money for these panels, and most likely everything is wrong, and people don't care. They don't seem to talk about it, and this isn't making it over complicated at all. It's just how you should be doing it in the first place. And even though you don't want to change the black level all the time and blah, 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 you don't have to. These settings will already be fixing all the black level rays in all games in most cases. And the washout in midtones will make the games look a lot clearer, and more 3D depth will be there now. And colors will pop a lot more than before. So the capabilities of the panel will now be a lot cleaner in Resolve in general. So yeah, if you're gonna spend time looking at your TV all the time, you really should take the time to watch that video and dial in those settings. It will be a huge difference, and it will be definitely beneficial towards you and your panel. Doesn't matter if you're using it for SDR, HDR, or Dolby Vision, or if you're using your panel for if it's a 42-inch or if it's a 83-inch or even a 98-inch. It doesn't matter at all. My settings are going to translate perfectly fine, no matter which model of LG OLED you have or what source content you're going to look at. It works for SDR and HDR. But it is mainly mapped for HDR, of course. But it works really well for SDR as well. Just it won't be as good as it is for HDR. And of course, it is mainly for PS5, but it works really well for everything else as well. I've checked myself on PC, on my friend's PC, using his LG C4 42-inch monitor. So yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. These technical seminars are very tiring. This have taken up to 4 hours now to record, so I hope you guys can understand that when I also take an addition time of several hours answering comments and talking to people on Discord, I do this for the kind of my heart. I want people to learn. I want people to use the panels correctly. But I also take the time to kind of let you know that there is no 100% right way. So if you want to use more colors, do that. But just know these TVs are pushing colors higher than they're intended to have a good color response towards the user. So it won't always be accurate if you go beyond 49. It doesn't make for a big issue in general, but it's like, yeah, you won't be accurate. If you're on PS5 or Xbox, 49 auto detect, accurate. That's the neutral point of the panel. If you go 55, which is the default inside of Game Optimizer, that is a boosted preset to make the colors look more popping for the gamers alike out there. It is not the default setting for that. For the panel inside of Game Optimizer, it will boost colors more than they're intended to. Cause a lot of blue near black and whatnot. So I recommend 49, even in Game Optimizer. Don't listen to all of the misinformation, please, guys. And know all the issues that we've talked about become way worse if you choose to use dynamic tone mapping on instead of HDR. That's also something to keep in mind. I have a lot of other videos and technical seminars on the channel, so if you want to learn, either go ahead and give me the question in the comments, or on Discord, or on PlayStation. Make sure to consider subscribing, please, so that we can grow and get a larger grip and reach on YouTube, so that we can help out a lot more people, because there are 2 million at least people with LG OLEDs that are using them, and they don't understand how much better the image can look. And it's just simply changing some settings on your TV, and now it's gonna look awesome. So yeah, please take the time to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, let me know what you think about all of this. And I honestly think it's sad that the industry has become so misinformed, and just it has become such a rabbit hole of not understanding stuff. And this video just single-handedly breaks down all the key issues, fix everything, at least as much as possible. And I wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching this channel, supporting the videos. I'm gonna go and take a nap now. I need some lunch. I'm really tired after doing this video. Hope you guys keep on supporting my channel and understand that there's more to come. So yeah, thank you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.